From protecting civilians from criminals to becoming the criminal, some cops have been caught cheating their own jobs. The public's confidence in law enforcement is damaged by these dirty cops, which makes it more difficult for good police officers to carry out their duties efficiently. So, what are the worst crimes cops have committed? Get ready to be shocked after finding out what these dirty cops have done. First, let's discuss the story of Rafael Antonio Perez. Rafael was given a job of protecting the public by lawfully dismantling gangs. Instead, he and numerous other officers from the Rampart division of the Los Angeles Police Department conned gang members out of drugs and cash, while also stealing and manipulating police evidence. When Perez joined the LAPD's Community Resources Against Street Hoodlums or Crash Anti-Gang Task Force, in 1995, he quickly developed a reputation as a tough cop who had a good understanding of the situations in the areas west of downtown Los Angeles that were within Rampart's jurisdiction. But by August 1998, he had been imprisoned for stealing cocaine worth $800,000 from an evidence room. And by the year 2000, he had entered into a plea agreement and accused 70 of his colleagues, crash officers, of misbehavior, ranging from ingesting alcohol while on the job to murder. The city was compelled to overturn 100 wrongful convictions and make $125 million in settlement payments as a result. So, how did Rafael Perez and his top gang fighting squad end up being held accountable for the largest police scandal in Los Angeles history? In response to a rise in the drug trade and associated gang violence, the LAPD established a specialist anti-gang task force called CRASH in 1979. The Rampart CRASH unit would represent the ideology of specialized police units that function almost independently. However, CRASH represented one front in a brutal conflict for police like Rafael Perez, who joined the task team in 1995. His reputation as a street-smart, tough cop eventually led to his transfer to Rampart Division's undercover drug team. Perez was given the duty of taking down the gangs, and both his demeanor and his ability to speak Spanish well complemented this role. Like many other young police officers, Perez experienced an adrenaline high when purchasing drugs from street vendors and reveled in his position of control. Perez thought he had discovered his niche and disregarded advice from a colleague that he loved working with drugs too much. He got involved in a lot of corrupt acts in the late 1990s, such as stealing cocaine from evidence lockers and profitably selling it. Additionally, he drugged suspects and lied in court to get them convicted. After Perez was caught stealing cocaine from the LAPD's evidence room in 1998, his activities were discovered. After being detained and accused of stealing drugs, he started working with the authorities right away in exchange for a lighter sentence. Due to Perez's assistance, a much wider LAPD police corruption scandal was uncovered. He disclosed that other crash unit officers had also engaged in criminal activity, such as fabricating evidence, robbing suspects of cash and drugs, and planting evidence. Intense pressure was placed on the LAPD as more police personnel were linked to the scam as the inquiry went on. The controversy prompted considerable adjustments to the department's rules and procedures, including the creation of new oversight structures to guarantee increased accountability and openness. It was one of the biggest police corruption scandals in American history and was dubbed the Rampart Scandal. Perez received a 5-year prison term for his involvement in the corruption case. He was nevertheless only imprisoned for 2 years before being freed and put in the witness protection program out of fear for his safety. Do you think Perez should have been let go after just 2 years? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Next, let's check out the criminal duo who were dubbed the Mafia Cops. Agents from the DEA and FBI conducted a raid on an Italian eatery off the Las Vegas Strip in 2005 on the basis of drug deal evidence acquired by a wired-up witness. They detained 2 middle-aged men. Both suspects were calmly taken into custody, one of whom had a pistol concealed in his waistband. Yet, the later unsealed indictment against the 2 men would undermine public trust in New York and bring shame on the country's largest police force. Detectives Louis Eppolito and Stephen Caracappa of the NYPD's Organized Crime Homicide Unit were, in fact, hitmen for the mafia. In 1994, the first informant who could characterize two corrupt NYPD detectives working for the mafia came forward. Prisoned Lucchese underboss Anthony Gaspipe Casso claimed responsibility for hiring their services. After being apprehended in 1993 after being on the run, Casso made an effort to negotiate a plea agreement by naming people and claimed that Caracappa and Ippolito were his crystal ball for handling informants, rivals, and potential arrests. One witness, Kaplan, testified to the most horrific instances of the mob cops crossing the line, setting up Ippolito and Caracappa to personally murder or give over for the Lucchese family's murder targets through phony arrests and traffic stop. The two detectives received a monthly salary of $4,000 for giving Casso information about law enforcement. They were paid extra for killing jobs, including $70,000 for a hit on Gambino crime family leader Eddie Lino, who was thought to have been responsible for a botched assassination attempt on Casso. In April 2006, a Brooklyn federal court jury determined that the duo was accountable for 8 homicides, kidnappings, and other crimes. Ippolito was found guilty on 1 count of ERIC, conspiracy money laundering, drug distribution, and drug conspiracy. Caracappa was found guilty on 1 count of RICO conspiracy. Caracappa, along with Luis Ippolito, were sentenced to life in prison in 2009 for the 8 executions they committed between 1986 and 1991. Caracappa got an additional 80-year prison sentence and was issued $4.25 million in fine. The next case will shock you more. It's about the most crooked cop in NYPD history. Officer Michael Dowd testified with striking candor before a panel looking into corruption in the New York Police Department in late September 1993. In his testimony to the Mullen Commission, Mr. Dowd described his decade-long transformation from an honorable rookie in the violent 75th Precinct in East New York, Brooklyn, to what one federal agent termed a once-in-a-generation corrupt cop. When crack cocaine first hit the streets in 1982, Michael Dowd joined the New York Police Department. He was in charge of East New York's 75th Precinct, which had the second highest murder rate in the city, with more than 100 homicides annually. But Mike Dowd soon realized how lucrative the drug trade was in comparison to his $600 weekly paycheck. He first only took money from crime scenes. Yet, when his behavior was left unchecked, he started robbing drug dealers and doing his own drug peddling. By 1986, he had begun working for cocaine trafficker Adam Diaz, who earned $1 million weekly. Dowd was paid generously by Diaz to inform him of impending raids and transport his drugs throughout the city. Diaz wanted an insider to alert him to potential threats since he used East New York supermarkets as fronts for his profitable cocaine activities. He paid Dowd $24,000 and $8,000 weekly pay to buy him out. So, whose story do you think was the most notorious? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. We thought we had seen it all, from mass murders, psychopaths, hooligans, and serial killers to even presidents. Cops have been on a roll arresting people of all types, but have seen cases where they arrest FBI agents. Were they rightly arrested? And do wrongful arrests of law enforcement officials call for the arrest with heavier punishments? Join us as we check a look at bizarre cases where dumb decisions from cops take them to rather odd position. So why don't we just kick things off with a crossover story of an FBI agent who has been wrongfully jailed? In our first case, the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department detained a former FBI agent for no apparent reason. It was a bizarre and ridiculous incident. As it turned out, Roger Golubski, a former detective, had been falsely accused of assaulting 2 black women between 1998 and 2002. There have been 2 accusations, to be exact. The real question is, however, how did the Kansas City police force allow him to get away with it for so long? Roger Golubski's unsolved case was discovered by the FBI while it was looking into the Kansas City Police Department's behavior. The former detective had a history of sexually assaulting women over the course of his 35-year career as a police officer and had been trading drugs for information. Lamonte McIntyre, a young black man, was accused of committing a double homicide by Golubsky during his time as a police officer. McIntyre was ultimately freed after serving 24 years in prison without proper cause as a result. Golubsky was taken into custody by the FBI on suspicion of 6 counts of sexually assaulting 2 black women. He has since entered a not guilty plea. Despite the jury rejecting his lawyer's request for release on medical grounds, he was kept in custody for routine medical examination. Black woman Rhonda Tribute, whose corpse was discovered in 1998, was one of Golubsky's informants. Her case remains unsolved despite the fact that the investigation was started but never finished. She died, and Golubsky's involvement is now being called into question by many people. That is exactly what we are saying. Many civil rights advocates across the nation have praised the arrest of Golubsky, but it also raises serious questions about police behavior and the abuse of their authority. According to Tricia Bullnell, the director of the Midwest Innocence Project, a full investigation into the abuses in Wyandotte County and systematic reforms are needed to ensure that no other police officers and public officials can continue to abuse their power. As more of Golubsky's crimes were discovered, it became clear that the Kansas City Police Department needed significant restructuring. Several inquiries remain unanswered as a result of the FBI's inquiry into the department. Roger Golubsky's arrest was long overdue, but it's worth noting that it was the FBI, not the Kansas City Police, who brought him to justice. Next up, with the arrest of 2 Drug Enforcement Administration officers by the FBI in Nassau County, Florida, the situation has unexpectedly turned around. The DEA, a law enforcement organization renowned for its aggressive efforts to combat the drug trade, has charged 2 officers with drug-related offenses. But the system's level of dysfunction clearly remains unclear. While selling drugs, including cocaine, that had been seized to willing customers, Sergeant James Hickox was captured with his hand in a cookie jar. His greed knew no bounds as he also combined drugs with other substances to make up the weight difference and kept parts for himself. In his bedroom closet, the FBI discovered 3 shoeboxes, each containing $100,000 in cash. They also discovered another $200,000 hidden in his garage. Hickox claimed that he borrowed the funds for his claim by partaking in his gambling habit when asked where the money came from. Hickox's actions have hurt the DEA's reputation and are obviously a breach of his obligations as a law enforcement officer. Joshua Erie, a highway inspector, had been covered in the same drugs that had to be seized, even going so far as to legally approve the prescription of 43 oxycodone pills. He purchased drugs from drug dealers. As if that weren't enough, while under the influence of drugs, he acquired a gun, due to the fact that he was trusted with the law rather than the law itself. Erie's actions were not only wrong, but also dangerous. The surprise arrest of these officers leaves the public wondering just how pervasive corruption is within law enforcement organizations. Sheriff Bill Leeper expressed his dissatisfaction by saying, "I think we need to make sure law enforcement personnel who violate the law are held accountable. When I learned of the accusations, I was shocked, let down, repulsed, and beyond angry. These incidents where the police ran into the FBI were some of the most shocking ones. We now look at our last and final case. A significant mishap that made headlines involved the case of mistaken identity between a Florida deputy and an FBI agent. When he received a call from a man claiming to be an FBI agent and asking to meet him in a nearby parking lot, Officer Gordon found himself in a precarious situation. This is a classic illustration of what can go wrong if a person doesn't confirm the identity of the person they're meeting, especially when speaking to a police officer. I do, but I don't understand what the problem is with your meeting me at the office. I'll talk to the U.S. Attorney's Office about it. Cut off the recording device now." "Okay, well, I will when I leave the area, sir." "Well, I will when I leave the area, sir." Asked the officer to turn off his recording device. Suspicions should have been aroused. However, Officer Gordon continued to record the conversation, a classic move. This was a wise decision as well, because it provided proof of what had happened, which, as you can probably guess, didn't turn out too well for Officer Gordon. Despite Agent Hatton's efforts to persuade Gordon that he was an FBI agent, The officer was skeptical and demanded to know how the agent obtained his phone number, given the predicament the officer was in. It is not shocking that he requested assistance and handcuffed Agent Hatton. However, things started to spiral out of control. It got worse when Hatton shut the car door, especially considering how hot it was in Florida. It's fortunate that Agent Hatton's condition didn't worsen because Gordon made a bad choice in doing this. Concerns were raised by Officer Gordon regarding Agent Hatton's investigation into the actions of law enforcement agencies in North Florida. Agent Hatton's claims that he was an FBI agent may not have been taken seriously by the officer because he was aware of the widespread corruption within the police department and worried about being connected to it. Let's say his ego overcame him. The hour-long incident took place on December 20 in a parking lot off U.S. Highway 98 in the coastal fishing community, 45 miles southwest of Tallahassee. Due to the heat, Agent Hatton, who was shielded from the elements by a bulletproof vest and had limited access to air conditioning, started to experience health problems like nausea and suffocation. He, however, avoided a fatal situation by being taken to a nearby hospital, where he received treatment for dehydration and heat exhaustion before being released. What do you think of our list? Do you think there are more corrupt officials out there? Sound off in the comments below. And while you are at it, make sure to hit subscribe and leave a like for more such content. Thanks for watching.
Why you giving me the finger? What? What's your problem? What? Why you giving me the finger?
The video shows an officer driving a car, but suddenly he stops because of a teen who showed him the middle finger. So what did he do actually? Why did the boy take part in such behavior? Stay tuned to the video till the end to find out.
Why you giving me the finger? What's your problem?
Am I free to go?
No.
What, do you have a problem?
No.
You have a problem?
No.
You don't have a problem, then I can leave.
Why you giving me the finger when you're walking?
The officer gets out of the car and asks the boy exactly what is his problem. Why are you giving me the middle finger? But the boy does not react directly and instead asks whether he is free to leave. The officer refuses to let him go and questions him again about why he gave him the middle finger.
Huh? Come here. Get over here.
What?
Get over here.
Is that a lawful order?
Yeah.
For what reason?
Because you're giving me the finger.
The cop asks the boy again to come over. The boy asks him if it is a legal order, but he doesn't understand why. The officer then tells him that it is against the law for him to give the officer the finger, but the boy says that's not true. According to the law, Mr. Walker's use of the middle finger was protected speech, and he could not be arrested for making the gesture at corporal pitch.
Whatever. What?
You are. What,
Come here.
I'm afraid of you?
Come here. Get over here.
What?
Get over here.
The officer lets him go, but as the boy walks off, he again says something disrespectful to the officer.
Get over here.
I'm not doing anything illegal.
Yeah, you are. You just cursed me off.
That's not a crime.
Yes, it is.
The cop tells the boy to come over here when he calls him back. The boy then says, I'm not breaking the law, but the cop says it is against the law because he cursed at him. The argument between the boy and the officer carries on until this happened.
Help!
No help.
Help!
No.
Help!
When Mr. Walker begins screaming for help, the officer grabs him and puts his hands behind his back. Corporal Pritch turns his body-worn camera off and doesn't turn it back on until backup comes. It is obvious that the officer's actions, including turning off the body-worn camera, violated both state law and the Attorney General's policy.
It is legal. He's allowed to
Who is
detain
this
you
kid?
until he performs his
So what am I
investigation.
doing though? What am I doing that made him detain me? What legal right?
Every time I rode by him twice, he shot me the finger. So I turned around and said, "What you?"
Is that a crime?
Problem?
The other officer arrives and says it's legal to detain the boy, but the boy is still arguing that it is not a crime. So the first officer explains that he has shown the middle finger twice.
He's looking at you because he's like, "What the fuck you want me to do?" Because it's not a crime. I know my rights.
Who are you?
I don't have to say any of that.
You do if you're being detained.
For what reason?
What?
The boy then asks the officers who have just come, what's the legal reason I'm being held? Where is this coming from? And what's the legal reason? Michael James LaMontagne arrives on the scene and informs the boy is required to identify himself because he is being detained despite the fact that he cannot provide a legal justification for the detention. However, New Jersey lacks a stop and identify statute that specifically requires Mr. Walker to identify himself, and courts have determined that New Jersey's obstruction statute cannot be applied to individuals who refuse to identify themselves to police.
Why are you
Shooting me.
Why are you?
Is that illegal?
Why are you flipping the bird? Yes, it is. When you are cursing in public, you are causing a public disturbance. You're being a nuisance to the public.
The second officer asserts that the boy must identify himself. The officer goes on to explain that it is forbidden to curse in public because you're causing a public disturbance and being a nuisance to the public. In what way? When he was driving by. It's called calls from a public disturbance, and it doesn't mean you've been charged with anything. You're being detained at that point.
What reason does he need to detain me?
He thought maybe he thought you were signaling him down. Were you signaling to him?
No,
Listen, I was
no.
just-
You knew very well that I wasn't signaling to you, right? I wasn't signaling to you.
You bring attention to yourself.
That's not signaling.
Your action's strange. I'm making sure you're okay.
Dude, that's so funny. Like, you're not here for my safety. You're not trying to protect
How
me.
do you know?
You're walking
may
on the
be-
side of the road and you're cursing and you're flipping the bird.
The boy asks again for what reason he's being detained, and they all start arguing.
Do you know him? Do you know him?
It's not your business. I
It is
plead
my
the
business.
fifth. I plead the fifth then.
It's
What's
the
the
public
First
law.
Amendment for?
Okay. The First Amendment is for your freedom of speech. Okay.
Okay.
What does that have to do with
Was I
using
making a call
gestures?
to action? Am I calling for an action to be done against you?
Do
No.
you understand
You're
that
bringing
it is?
attention to
Listen,
yourself and
listen,
getting
listen, listen.
That's not legal.
It's
The boy asks for his First Amendment, and the officer explains it.
so
Well, I
legally
would-
you need to hold anything.
Well, I want to know from your
I
perspective. What was I
pulled up
doing?
onto the scene, so you tell me what you were
To
doing.
bring your attention to
I
yourself.
plead the fifth. You idiot. How long have you been a cop? 6?
Longer than you.
Listen,
Longer than you, I'm not a cop.
I don't understand what the point of this is.
The boy asks for the perspective of another cop.
Now what happens?
He just admitted that
now
he was
what
going
happens
to arrest
is when
me.
he gives you a lawful order to stop, and you do
It
not
wasn't a
stop,
lawful order, though.
and you do not stop.
It legally was not a lawful
and you
order.
do not stop, then that becomes a criminal offense, and then yes, you can be put under
But
arrest.
it's not a lawful order. Then I take it to court, and then he'd get sued, and I get
Maybe.
punitive damages. I'd be rich. Is that what you want?
That
Oh,
may,
you don't know the
that
law,
may be
buddy.
what happens.
You don't know
if
the
you
law.
think that that's going to happen.
The boy laughs at what the officer says and then says he just admitted he gives you a lawful order to stop and you don't do it. It wasn't all Florida, though, and you do it legally. That becomes a criminal offense, and then yes, you can be put under, but it's not a lawful order. Then I take it to court, and then he gets sued and I get millions in damages. I'd be rich is what you wanted. The officer stated that the Fourth Amendment was not violated in this case since no seizure happened. Mr. Walker, the boy, was not arrested. However, as the Supreme Court explained in the infamous 1968 decision of Terry versus Ohio, the Fourth Amendment guarantees the right of the people to be safe in their persons, homes, papers, or belongings against unreasonable searches and seizures. However, it is clear that Mr. Walker was captured when Corporal Pritch, the officer, made physical contact with him in order to prevent him from fleeing. However, it is also quite likely that a judge would determine that Mr. Walker was detained for Fourth Amendment purposes when Corporal Pritch first ordered him to stop and he accepted.
That may be what's going to happen. It may not be what happens. Okay?
Okay, I
What may
understand.
happen is
All right, so
is
what
you
are we
may get
wasting
a
time
normal
for?
jury,
Am I free
and
to go?
What
Am I
may
free to
happen
go?
is you may
Am
get
I
a
free to
normal
go?
jury. No, because at this point
For what
you
reason?
were detained. Okay, because he told you to stop
Okay.
and you didn't stop.
Okay.
So therefore, you need to identify yourself as a part of the investigation. So what is your name?
Okay, I'm gonna need all of your badge numbers.
I will
Your
give
badge
you everything
numbers.
written down on a card. What is your
I
name?
could give you.
If you have an ID,
Am I?
that's perfect.
Am I? Okay, I'll take it to court
If you have an
because
ID,
this is still a detainment.
Are you a juvenile?
This is an illegal detainment,
Are
so
you
I
a
can still.
juvenile?
I'm not going to answer that.
The teenager asks if he is free to leave, but the officer says no because he is detained. He must identify himself as a participant in the investigation. The boy becomes more aware of his surroundings and informs them that he intends to take off all the badge numbers. The officer responds that everything will be written down on a card, but the boy believes it is still entertaining.
Okay?
Well, I'm going to
And
take
you
a
can do
lawsuit.
that.
So who would I press criminal charges against? What?
You're gonna have to. You're gonna have to
police
call.
officers.
You're gonna have to call and figure that out with a lawyer. You would have to file a complaint with the courts.
Got it.
Okay, and then you can go from there if you want to see if you can press charges and whatnot if
Perfect.
you're violating your rights.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Stay
All
out
right,
of the
am I
roadway.
free to go?
Don't give us fingers.
Shut the up.
Stay out of the roadway. Stop causing a public alarm.
Dude, shut the up. Am I
Stop
free to go?
cursing, okay?
Well, I'm going to
Then
take a
you can do
lawsuit.
that.
So who would I press criminal charges against? What?
You're gonna have to. You're gonna have to
police
call.
officers.
You're gonna have to call and figure that out with a lawyer.
The boy asks the lawyer to prove them wrong legally about how he was making a disturbance. The officer tells him that for further investigation, he'll have to call and talk to a lawyer about that. If your rights have been violated, you have to make a complaint with the courts. From there, you can decide if you want to press charges or do other things.
Am I
You're free to go.
Stop cursing. Go.
You're free to.
When the officers let him go free, Mr. Walker left from there without causing any further incident. After the incident, less information was known, so we don't know what they did as per the investigation.
The law is for everyone to follow, and no one is exempted from it, not even lawyers. No matter how intelligent they think they are, karma always gets them. Can attorneys get away with anything? Can they sway a ruling in favor of their clients or even themselves? Watch the video to see how these attorneys get owned by cops for breaking the law.
Las Vegas attorney in some trouble for a series of alleged late-night rendezvous with one of her clients.
Hal Uhrig, an area criminal defense attorney from Orlando, made headlines all over the country. Hal Uhrig, who represented George Zimmerman in the Trayvon Martin shooting incident, was arrested on various charges, which included soliciting perjury and tampering with a witness or victim. Marcos Lopez, Osceola County Sheriff, said that Uhrig took on a case involving a man named Krishnath Prasad, who had been charged of raping a 9-year-old girl. Uhrig was accused of holding a meeting with his client, the victim and her father. Uhrig tried to cut a deal to keep the suspect from going to jail. During their meeting, Uhrig instructed the victim and her father to do 3 things. Firstly, to write a declination, that is a letter to the state attorney saying that the rape never happened.
Basically a letter to the state attorney saying the rape didn't happen.
Secondly, to avoid being served a subpoena so that they didn't have to go to court to testify, and lastly, to lie during their deposition and say that the rape didn't happen. According to Lopez, he wanted to make sure this guy didn't go to trial for rape. He added that Mr. Prasad committed the sexual battery at a time when she was 9 years old. And this is what caused Mr. Uhrig to work a deal out with the victim to try and get Mr. Prasad off on a lesser charge so that sexual assault battery cases will go to trial, and this will be a separate trial against the attorney. Even after being pressured to such an extent, the victim decided to come forward and report the conduct to the state attorney's office in July of 2021. Osceola County started an investigation against Prasad's attorney on the basis of the victim's complaint. The victim's father engaged in a controlled phone call with Uhrig and said that he couldn't talk on the phone about any specifics and wanted to meet in person. According to the officials, the father wore a recording device during his meeting with Uhrig, and during the meeting, the attorney made him turn off his cell phone and told the father to read a script off of his computer screen.
He wore a recording device, the victim's father. During the meeting, the attorney made him turn off his cell phone.
Lopez said that the script was his defense for when he goes to court on the charges. However, fate had other plans for them. Prasad, who was arrested back in 2019, is working his way through the court system. On the other hand, Uhrig is accused of soliciting to commit perjury, which is a 3rd-degree felony, and also for tampering with and harassing a victim, which amounts to a capital life felony. Given Uhrig's 40-year-long career, this might not be the first time he has done something like this. According to Lopez, if you're an attorney, you've been practicing law for a long time, and there's no way you're going to jeopardize your career on something like this, especially at that age. Especially at that age, it's retirement time. So I think this wasn't his first rodeo. Unless someone else comes forward, we won't know that, but that's what I suspect this time. The next attorney in line is Alexis Plunkett. This topsy-turvy case involves a 38-year-old attorney from Las Vegas named Alexis Plunkett, was indicted with 2 counts of conspiracy to unlawfully possess a portable communication device and 12 counts of a portable telecommunication device by a prison. The charges relate to her visit with her 28-year-old client and boyfriend at the time named Andrew Arevalo. This man was shot in the face by a high-state correction officer in 2014. He also faced felony and weapon charges and was awaiting trial. His case was represented by Plunkett in his lawsuit against the Nevada Department of Corrections in connection with the shooting, which resulted in another man's death. During her visit, security camera footage shows Plunkett handing over her phone to Arevalo. Now, this is a felony that could land her in jail for a year. However, her case took a complicated turn. Even though the couple started off as boyfriend and girlfriend, they were experiencing rifts in their relationship after her phone was examined by the police. It seems that she is trying to put a hit on Arevalo. Her text messages about her joking about felonies led her to her downfall. Some of the texts read, "I've placed hits in every Nevada prison on Andrew with every homie and lifer I know." She further added, "This pause will never survive in prison now. He's F with the wrong bit. I am not the one. I represent all the sure knows and he's gonna get it." However, one of the people in the group asked her to delete the message. He said, "Alexis, this isn't funny. I know you are under a tremendous amount of stress, but I'm not interested in joking about felonies. I don't think anyone is either." She replied, "I am not joking. That's why I said to delete it. He said he was going to have me murdered, so I'll take care of business first." Plunkett's attorney Adam Solinger said that her messages show that she was under great stress and she was only venting about the bad situation she was in, and that her words shouldn't be taken as a serious threat. Despite all of her 14-count indictment, Plunkett was dismissed by the district judge Michael Villani. However, she was shockingly arrested again for charges of bribing or intimidating a witness, which is a felony. According to her lawyer, her guilty plea comes after reaching an agreement with prosecutors. The agreement is a good resolution for all sides involved. It's the choice that she made that's best for her, and I respect that. Ultimately, it came down to being tired of continued litigation. Fighting a war on two fronts takes a toll on you, and remaining in custody pending your trial and resolution of your other case is really hard to do. She pleaded guilty of possession of a telecommunication device and was ordered to serve 3 years of probation and was later disbarred. In the next case, Christopher Reynolds, a 44-year-old Florida attorney, shocked everyone. He was accused of stealing nearly $800,000 from his clients. He was arrested by the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office for multiple charges, including money laundering and grand theft. He started his private practice in Seminole back in 2015, representing victims of vehicle crashes. He had dealt with at least 16 clients before they had their money stolen by Reynolds. It was back in October that the detectives came to know about the theft when one of Reynolds' clients came forward. The client complained to the authorities that her lawsuit for $100,000 had been settled months earlier. However, Reynolds never notified her about this. The investigators made a shocking discovery. Reynolds had forged his client's signature on the legal documents and collected the money from insurance companies that should have been disturbed to pay medical bills and provide other compensation related to car accidents. This was a similar pattern for most of the clients that had availed his services. Once he had settled his case, he would disappear without a trace, never to be seen again. He would neither pick up the calls or respond to the voicemails, and would cut off all forms of communication he had with the client's eye. In another incident, the lawyer pocketed the woman's $100,000 and continuously lied to her in the communications before it abruptly stopped that he was going to solve this with the insurance company. He also forged the woman's name on settlement documents, and he never paid her medical bills with the settlement money. His highest theft amounted to $148,750 from a client back in 2019. Sheriff Gualtieri claimed that the clients must have had serious injuries for their settlement money to be in 6 figures. Now, what did he do with the money he stole? The answer will shock you. The lawyer had a drug abuse problem. He used a portion of the stolen money to purchase drugs and nearly spent $30,000 on pornography and $424,000 on prostitution. Sheriff Gualtieri later commented, "They're licensed to practice law. They've got the boxes checked. They've got the credentials. They've got the credibility that goes with that, and they're really just a thief who is ripping them off." These are not isolated cases. Many lawyers who are corrupted and have been cheating people for years are roaming free in this world with no one to put a check on them. What do you think of these lawyers? Were they punished approximately? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to press the bell icon and subscribe to our channel for future updates.